I'm PeterJ Kamper. This house is going to be demolished shortly, and we have lived here. The Kamper family has lived here since 1946, and I wanted to record something that was going to show everything that has occurred since the Campers have owned this house. It's been since 1946. It was known as the Casey House a long time ago. I'm PeterJ Kamper actually, and this is my wife Wendy Elizabeth Kamper. We've been married for 42 years, and we have lived here for an extended period of time during our marriage, and we love this place, and we want this place to continue, but unfortunately it cannot, so we are moving on. This is the original doorbell from this door, which is an original door since my parents and grandparents bought this place back in 1946, and it still works. And it will be going with us wherever we go.
My name is Wendy Elizabeth Regenberg Kamper. I'm married to my husband, as he said, 42 years. We lived in this home for an extended period of time. This is the longest I've lived anywhere in my life in one period of time. I raised both my boys here, Michael Kenneth Kamper, PeterJ Kamper Jr., and we've had a lot of good times here. Always had a lot of family, always had a lot of friends. Our doors were always open. They were never locked, which is kind of amazing for today's day and time. It's 1329 Hamburg Turnpike, and I'm sure you can hear the traffic on the highway. Many nights we get thrown out of bed by ambulances, fire trucks, and police cars. But we lived here a long time, and it was wonderful, and we had beautiful gardens and tomatoes and everything you could imagine. Never a lot of money, but we've never had a lot of money, but that's okay because we had a lot of love.
When I was growing up, this was where my grandparents lived. Me and my 4 siblings, 2 boys, 2 girls. This section of the house was where our siblings and my siblings lived and slept, and we ran a soda and beer business. And we're gonna go to the garage where the soda sales used to take place, and before we go inside, I will point out, yes it did, it looked like this, other than that section of the garage that was rebuilt, but this section right here from this garage door to there, used to be where we stacked all of the empty soda bottles in their cases. And then you would come in here and the soda would be lined up along this wall. We'd go there, then leave the door open, and we'd go this way, and we'd go over here.
Watch where you step.
And then the beer, eventually, probably about 15 years after Mom and Dad started the soda business, he was able to get a warm beer license for the Township of Wayne, and we were able to sell warm beer. Being able to sell warm beer, we were also able to sell kegs. And so this expanded to here between soda and beer, and then we did keg beer for parties. We were able to do that. We would get it somewhat cold, deliver it, and then ice it down in a tub, and we were able to do that. Wendy and I, when we first got married, we lived on the other side of the house and made a family there. And
Yes, we did.
and
PeterJ Kamper Jr.'s first bedroom, that bedroom upstairs in the front of the house over the door. And Grandma and I would sit on the porch and we'd have tea and we'd hold the baby with the butterfly bushes. Lots and lots of butterfly bushes all over. We love the butterflies, the birds,
She's the talker.
and our cup of tea was always a good thing. My father-in-law, sometimes a little bit of scotch, but the most of the time, a little bit of beer, a little bit of wine, but good times. A lot of parties here, a lot of big tents up in the yard.
Keep talking.
a lot of what we called driveway parties.
Right.
Everybody would
Camper
come.
driveway party. Whoever showed up,
Everybody would come, and wherever they came, we would put a table up, and everybody would be here. Everybody, anybody would be welcome, and we would have discussions, fun, couple of drinks, and everything was great. It was a wonderful place to live. It was very, very nice, and I'm gonna be very, very sorry to see it go.
we had a lot of driveway parties. A lot of them would start with us being out here by ourselves, and cars would drive by. And as soon as they drove by, they'd see we were out here, and they'd pull up and say, "Is the beer cold? Do you have any wine?" And of course, the answer was always yes. A lot of good friends. Sometimes people we hadn't seen in years would pull up because they knew we lived here for so long and say, "Do you still live here?" And we'd say, "Yep, we're still here." A lot of good times. Most of our fun parties were unexpected ones. Burgers, dogs, whatever we could throw on. Sometimes run to the farm and get some corn and tomatoes. But for the most time, it was a wonderful, wonderful time. We did have planned parties. We had Kamper Palooza one year. We had 389 people. That was quite the craziness. But it was well worth it.
2-day.
And it was a 2-day party because everybody had to come back the next day and finish up the
2-day.
food and the beer. And we had people sleeping on the lawn. I had to bring them in the house. That was kind of crazy, but it was a lot of fun. My boys always had a blast.
Needless to say, I was not allowed to have another 2-day party.
That was too much for me. But we're lucky enough and blessed enough that we have 2 grandkids. They ride their little quads here all the time, and they still want to do it. They're a little sneaky if Grandma doesn't watch them. They kind of sneak over and ride a little bit. But they love the driveway for their scooters and their chalk and everything else. We're definitely going to miss this place an awful lot.
This property originally included a lot back there where that White House is right now. And it also included a 150, I believe. I believe both of them were 150 by 150 lot over there. And they included where the grass is behind this building next door so that they could make their building bigger. That was the original plot that my grandmother, grandfather, grandmother Ethel Kamper, and grandfather Peter Kamper, and my mother Marion Margaret Kamper, and Peter Kamper Jr. bought back in 1946. My grandfather used to plant gladiola bulbs in all three of those lots, plus over here and up, and he planted over 100,000 gladiola bulbs. He was a #1 grower and #1 blue ribbon winner of gladiolas from, I don't remember the years, at Morningside Florist in Patterson. And after my grandfather passed and grandmother passed, my father got involved in mums, chrysanthemums, and he was a #1 grower, #1 ribbons, first place for new breeds and for his performance on older breeds. And he took over after my grandfather passed. He didn't do the gladiolas, but he did do the mums. And then he gave a shot because one of his best friends was Tommy
Leonard.
Huh? Leonard. Sorry. Tommy Leonard. And Tommy Leonard was a #1 seller of dahlias. And he tried to get my dad to do dahlias. And he tried very, very hard. But he found out that mums were his passion, not dahlias.
So, as he said, his parents had a soda business, and my mom and dad used to come down here with my sisters and I, and we used to get a case of soda. And my sisters and I would each get to pick out one bottle of soda, and then dad would fill up the rest of the case. So the first time I met him, he was putting soda in my car, and I was only 5 years old, and he was 10. But then we met later at the Fireman's Fair, which is local down the street. And the first time I came to this house, I walked through the door, and my mother-in-law was sitting where she always sat, at the breakfast nook, facing the door, having a cup of tea, peeling potatoes. And I called her mom from the first day I met her, and she really was like a mom to me, that's for sure. I adored that woman. There's nobody better than my mother-in-law. Simple conversation, simple cup of tea, tap her feet together, watch the birds. Very happy, very, very hardworking lady. At one point, she was working a couple of jobs so she could support her family and save her home. This was always home to her, and to a lot of other people too. Many people lived here on and off. We had a lot of people that were unfortunate sometimes that had nowhere to go, and they'd knock on the door and they'd end up spending time with my husband and I. A lot of people lived with us, that's for sure. From the kid that slept in the driveway that we brought into the house, to family members, to all kinds of people that were always around. But it's a lot of memories here. A lot of memories here.
You forgot when you saw me a little bit later on that I had a shirt on that said, "Try it, you'll like it."
Try it, you'll like it, and I did.
And
I
you did. So.
That's right.
Okay. I don't know that I can add much more to that. We're here for 42 years since then.
That's right. I tried it and I liked it, so I stayed around.
I don't know what else to say about here. It's, I'm gonna cry when this place comes down.
That makes both of us.
I would have loved to have stayed here till my days were over, like my mom and dad did, like my grandmother and grandfather did. but it's just too hard to be able to do it from a house that was built probably before 1800. And I have done my best, we have done our best
To keep it going.
to try and improve it as the best we could, but
Just got to be too much
it's time,
for us.
unfortunately, to say goodbye to the old homestead.
It's just, you know,
And
you can't compete with that.
And when they do the eminent domain, they don't, they just take the land.
well, they made
They
me
say they pay
made
you
me
for
an
it,
offer.
but, you know,
They made me an offer which wasn't acceptable, but I had to hire an attorney. I hired an attorney. The attorney gets 1/3 of whatever he gets as an increase in that number. And there was a lot of things that need to be upgraded here that would have contributed to that, and I couldn't afford that. It was
too
just,
much. And for them to take
and
more,
so,
they already own 5 inches under our house, so they're going to end up in the middle of our living room. So we have 2 beautiful sons, PeterJ Kamper Jr. and Michael Kenneth Kamper, that were lucky enough to be a part of this house and this home. We always called it home because that's what it was. Peter, a police officer, followed in Dad and Uncle Kenny's footsteps. Very, very proud. From the Junior Police Academy that he taught, to Semunitions, to head of the range, to everything that he did. We're so proud of him. From when he was a little boy, he was very hyper and he never wanted to sit still. He ran around all the time, and it was very hard to catch him. Sometimes Grandma almost didn't make it down the driveway, but he was a good boy, and my husband and I were very, very blessed to have him. And it's a little difficult now, but he's around and we love him very, very much. Michael Kenneth Kamper, he spent a lot of time in that little shed back there and had a great time when he was in high school. A lot of parties, a lot of beer. And he's an electrician now with 2 beautiful grandchildren. And he has a daughter that's taken after him. She's Kylie, she's bright red hair, and she's a little devil. And then we have Michael Joseph Kamper, who is the best little boy you could ever imagine. I think sometimes he's a little more like his Uncle Petey than he is like his daddy, but in some ways. But they were lucky enough to grow up here, and we had so many parties and so much fun. And I can't even reminisce on all the memories that we've had. They've had friends since they were little boys, and they kept them for a lifetime, and they're still coming around, and they're still hanging out with us. And we're just very, very blessed to have so much family and so many friends still coming to see us and still coming to be a part of our family. So
everybody is going to miss the Kamper compound.
that's right. As my son used to call it, the Kamper compound.
I can't be any more proud of my 2 sons. They were both wonderful sons. My older son, Peter, was the big boy. He was a pound more than Michael when he was born, but he was bigger and we had to open up the nipple on his bottle and put baby food in the bottle to satisfy him, because he was just big and wanted to eat and wanted to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that he did. And he grew up to be a wonderful young man. Very good respect for everyone. A very, very large heart. And Michael, he was a little more fussy. He didn't like to eat. So he's a little less than his brother. And if he had learned to eat like his brother did, he might be a little bit bigger than he is now. But he's still grown up to be a very, very large man, and a very, very good man who takes very, very good care of his children, my grandchildren, and his whole family, and everybody else. And he has the same heart that Peter had. And if I have done nothing, or we have done nothing in this world, having two children that had our heart for caring and for loving, we have accomplished that, because they are both from that same mold, and they are wonderful, wonderful children.
Imagine what it must have been like around here in the
60s?
So full of life, just so full of life.
It was wonderful.
People helped each other. You needed milk, somebody would bring it to you. It was so different. People cared about people.
The Fireman's Fair Fireman's Fair Parade used to go right down that road. And we used to sit out on our front and watch the firemen's parade go down, all the fire trucks, all the police cars. They would go down the street, and they went to a Fireman's Fair down behind Preakness, and it was just wonderful. And then that's actually where I met her. They didn't do the. I don't know that they were doing the Fireman's Fair on Hamburg Turnpike anymore then, but it was the Fireman's Fair over on Berdan Ave that she saw me and saw my shirt, and we've been together since. But it's a wonderful place. I don't want to leave it, but I have to leave it. And the memories are, I could never, ever, ever remember everything that occurred here. Everything has been wonderful, just wonderful. My aunt used to live here. Anytime either of us, any of the children moved out, if my brother Kenny and his wife moved out, somebody else moved in. We had family members, extended family members of my brother's wife's family stay here for extended periods of time, because they needed a place to stay, and everybody was welcome. And it's just been, you got married, you stayed here for a little while. Both of my children, both Michael and Amy, his wife, stayed here on one side of the house when they first got married, until they could save up enough money to be and get where they needed to go in their own life. And Peter and his wife Christine did exactly the same thing. They stayed here, they saved some money, and they went off on their own and got their own house. And that's what this place has been since the day that my grandmother, Ethel Kamper, and Peter Kamper bought this with my mother and father, Peter Kamper Jr. and Mary and Margaret Kamper, back in 1946. It has been that ever since. It has been a home to whoever needed a home. And that's probably the biggest regret that I have, getting rid of it, because I had my brother-in-law, John Cannella, living here with me, along with my sister, Marion Cannella, for a while. My sister, unfortunately, needed to go where she could get better care, and I had my brother-in-law with me for a long time after that. And unfortunately, with the sale, we had to find other arrangements for him. And welcome to the Kamper compound. This opening was where the original doorbell was for people to come in. This was a door afterwards that everybody came in. Okay? They came in this door, and they came in here
Into our living room.
to our living room.
Yep. This is where we had a lot of fun times. Merry Christmas, usually the tree was there.
No,
Or there.
she was over there.
You can still see the scratch on the ceiling from the tree
Right.
being too big.
Okay? And this, years ago, used to be a wood fireplace. They used to heat this entire place with 3 fireplaces. One down in the cellar, one here, and you will see something similar to this on the next floor when we go upstairs. And then
And here was the kitchen,
this was the kitchen.
which we took out. All of the cabinets went to our other house. We didn't want to leave them behind, so we took them with us.
And there, at one time, long time ago, there was a door here that went into the hallway next door, because this is where, a lot of years ago, was the bar. When they had the carriage house and everything, you used to be able to come from the other side of the house, come up here, you would come in here, and this was the bar. And
We're going upstairs to what used to be our bedroom. PeterJ Kamper Jr. used to sleep in this room when he was a little boy. This is the bedroom where our firstborn, PeterJ Kamper Jr., stayed when I brought him home from the hospital. He loved to bounce his crib up and down like Bam Bam from Pebbles and Bam Bam Flintstone, and he almost bounced it all the way down the stairs one morning. This is our bedroom where we slept for years, and had the baby's cradles right next to the bed over here when Peter was born. Michael came to this house much, much later, and we'll show you that room in a little bit. But this is the room that my husband and I slept in together on and off for many, many years. This used to be that fireplace that he was talking about. The other fireplace was in that wall. From the one downstairs, from the basement to the living room to the bedroom upstairs. Many good memories, that's for sure. This is the bathroom. This used to be a clawfoot tub here, painted pink, when I first came about the camper home. And as we came back with our boys, they needed a shower, so we took the clawfoot tub out. And then we ended up with a little more modernized bathroom than the one that we had. And I took the bathroom door, which was the original door from the house, It's an old barn-like door, and I took that door, and that I'm gonna make a table out of for my home that I'm in now.
This opening was never here until my dad got Alzheimer's, and Wendy and I brought our children back home here to help Mom with Dad. And we opened this up to make access so that we would have enough room for the children and us. And the actual wall stopped where the door is, and this used to be a closet. And we broke through 18 inches worth of
Beam.
concrete, brownstone, in order to put the door in and have access to the top half. All right. This was the three brothers' room. This was the room that I used to sleep right here in a single bed, and there was a bed there for my brother Dennis, and there was a bed over there for my brother Kenneth, and the three boys shared this room for as long as until Kenneth went into the Navy and Dennis went away to college. I remember sleeping in my bed here, not feeling well, and having water next to my bed. And when I woke up in the morning, the water was frozen. Because at that point in time, when I was about 10, 12 years old, somewhere around there, this side of the house did not have the heat that is displayed now. The heat that is displayed now was put in when Wendy and I brought our children back, and we were here to help Mom and Dad, and we put the heat in. But I remember waking up and having the glass be frozen. And you come this way, this was always open for whatever. And then this bedroom, this was a bedroom for my two sisters, Marion M. Canella, or Kamper Canella, and Beverly Van Haren. This is where they grew up until they went away to college or until they were married.
Later on, when we moved back to the home, when Dad had the Alzheimer's, this room became Michael Kenneth Kamper's room. And he used to sleep here with many of his friends, and you'd be surprised how many guys they could pile into that room to sleep.
How old was he then?
Michael was, I think when we moved back, he was in 7th grade, 8th grade. And he had a lot of friends, still does, thank God. And I'm sure a lot of them would like to pile back into that room once again, especially the ones I carried up the stairs one night. Okay, this was PeterJ Kamper Jr.'s bedroom when we moved back when Dad had the Alzheimer's. And this room was where he did all his studies for high school and studies for the police department. And this was his bedroom when he became a police officer. many, many years ago, but I don't know who slept here before him.
For a period of time, this was Mom, Marion Kamper, and Dad Kamper, which was Peter Kamper. This was their bedroom. When I went away to the service, this was their bedroom. And they lived here for a lot of years up here.
I'm working. All right, we're gonna go down these stairs now?
I'm following you out.
Okay.
This is the stairway. This is the stairway down to the back section of the house.
Wow.
A little steep, you gotta be careful.
It looks.
Yeah,
It's bigger than it looks.
it is a lot bigger than it looks and a lot older than it looks too sometimes, but.
And the bedroom we just came from was my mother and father's bedroom when we were little. As we got older and my grandparents moved on, this bedroom became the bedroom for my mother and father, Peter Kamper and Marion Kamper, because it was on the single floor. In particular, it was especially after he had gotten Alzheimer's. And we wanted to keep him on a single floor. We didn't want him going up and down stairs. So this is where Mom and Dad paid. Prior to that, this is where my grandparents used to live when my mother and father lived upstairs. This is where Ethel and Peter Kamper lived. This is where they had their bedroom, and then they would go into the next door, and they had the bottom floor next door that you've already seen.
This bedroom was Michael and Amy's first bedroom that they came to and lived with us. And in the hallway out here was where they put the baby's crib when my grandson was born. And they lived here until they bought their house. Their very first home after they were married, and a little bit before that. And in the hallway here, Michael put that heater in. That was where the baby's crib was. My grandson, Michael Joseph Kamper, slept there in his crib when they brought him home from the hospital. Excuse me.
Just film them and show it.
Old doors that I thought about taking with us, but we took enough already. Can't take every door. Yeah, whatever.
You think that doorknob is?
That doorknob there, I would guess somewhere around the 1800s, I would think. That doorknob's original. It's even got the keyhole for the old keys. But we did take some of the doors, we just couldn't take all of them. It's just too many. So.
So is it?
See that? Yeah.
It's like a lot of people here.
There was always a lot of people here. This house was always full of people, which is why now I'm kind of lost, because it's him and I'm not used to that. I'm used to a lot of people.
Yes, yes.
We always had, well, this room was the living room, and this is where we always had tea, Mom and I, especially when Dad wasn't feeling so well. We'd sit at night and watch a little TV and make sure he stayed in bed and check his oxygen tanks and stuff, and we'd have our tea. She and I, she had a little tea cart that used to be over here for a while, and we had the little corner cabinets that we took those out too. But we had many Christmases in this room, many good times in this room with family and friends. House was always full, always full.
This is the living room that I've known for over 50 years. If you look over here, you can see
Mom's moon and stars. You can still see it.
and stars, and there was a small space heater here that is identical to the one in the kitchen. And when I grew up, this heater and the heater in the kitchen was the only heat that we had on this side of the house, and they left the door to upstairs open to let some of the heat go up, which is why earlier I mentioned a glass of water that I had next to me freezing. We had to be careful of money, we had to be careful of everything, and 2 space heaters heated this for all 5 children for all of those years. And what my parents did was just amazing, to give us as much as they could give us. And I can't thank them enough.
And when Mom was cold, she'd sit on the heater.
Yes, she would. She absolutely would. She would just, and she was only a little girl. She'd have to hop up just a little bit, but she would hop up and she would sit on it, and it would heat her up, and then she'd be good for a little while, and then it was...
When you're cold, Wen, this is where you sit.
Yep.
And
The moon and the stars, and across, they were up there for probably 50 years. I don't remember them ever being down until after Mom passed and we took them down.
has been, always will be.
I want everybody to know, and everybody who doesn't know, most people in the family do know, that all of this knotty pine, every inch of this knotty pine, was done by Grandpa Kamper, Peter Kamper, who also was behind and was the head person building Camp Hope up in, I believe it's Bloomingdale, when he worked for the county of Passaic. And he was a very good carpenter, and all of this knotty pine, not just in this room, but as you'll see as we go into the kitchen, all the intricate stuff, especially over here, all of this, all of it was his work, and it was all hand done. Okay, now we go to the kitchen. This door has been here for as long as I'm alive. It's been the door that kept everybody out, and the door that we opened to let everybody in when our door was always open. Again, all of this knotty pine was my grandfather, Peter Kamper.
Should meet Michael, he'd get along with us.
Okay.
Michael's the electrician's coming.
All right, we are now in the kitchen. This is the stove that I was talking about that was in the living room. We had 2 of these, this one and one in the living room, that it heated this entire house for all of us. And this heater, after all of these years, still works, still heats this entire house. God bless whoever made Magic Chef. There used to be a door here. We took the door because we wanted a remembrance, but this was hideaway place. This is where things that were important got hid, things that were valuable got hid, because if somebody came into the house that wasn't of the caliber that we thought we were allowing in our house, they wouldn't think to look. So this was hideaway place. and we come over here. And I apologize for this to be gone because this was my favorite place. This was the breakfast nook, and it was the best place to sit with Mom, especially, or Dad, or Dad, but it was the best place. It was where everybody, if one or two people came in, everybody came to the breakfast nook. This had a bench, that had a bench, and this was a table that came out like that with a little, and this was the place. This is where we sat. It was the place reserved for primarily the children when we had a big to-do in the kitchen, but I will allow my wife Wendy to talk about everything that went on in the kitchen because she knows better than I.
If this room could talk, this has to be everyone's favorite room in the house because this is where Mom sat all the time. And if you wanted to learn about the world or things that were happening or you needed to figure something out, you went to Mom. She'd make you a cup of tea. She'd always make you feel better. Very simple lady, hard-working lady. And when she was distracted from things and wanted to get her thoughts together, she'd always do the dishes. Don't touch the dishes. Only Mom does the dishes, unless she tells you you can do the dishes. If it's Thanksgiving or Christmas, you might get away with a little bit. For the most part, she did the dishes. She would cook. She would have her family around her. She was always baking chocolate chip cookies and those little almond cookies that everybody loves so much. And it's just a great, great place to be when Mom was living around the holidays. If the walls could talk, it would be amazing. Peter and Christine, Michael and Amy started their lives together here in this kitchen. They would cook in here, and Mikey would get a bath in that sink, and the bottles would get warmed on the stove, and there's just so many memories. It's hard to remember them all. But the one thing I remember the most about it is that whenever we were in this room, we were all together, we were all happy, most of the time laughing, very few times it would be difficult, especially when Dad had the Alzheimer's. But then there were funny times too when he had that, but especially when he thought I was his girlfriend. But it was a great time for family and friends. I'm very happy that I had the life that I did in this house, that I was able to raise my children in this house, and that my husband's family took me in and loved me like my own family did. And my mother-in-law was always the voice of reason, and I miss her dearly, and I wish we could keep it, but it's time for it to go. But the memories will stay forever, and I know that if she's looking down right now, she'd be standing at that sink saying, "Wen, don't do the dishes, they're mine."
Mom, I miss you. I love you. All I can tell you is I remember the breakfast nook being full, the table being full here, the table being full over there, and in front of the big window going out to the wonderful porch, the table being full. Being full of our family and people that we loved, and you helped me understand what family was and how important family is, and I will do my best till the day that I go to have the same house that you always had, with an open door policy. Everybody was always welcome, especially family.
Hold it. Beautiful. One more for the road. One more for the road. That's right there. Got it. Beautiful.
Me.
Uh-huh.
I expected this place to be down, and then we waited, what, 7 days, 8 days, and there's been nobody here. And I said,
My very favorite spot in this whole house, this whole yard, is this porch. Because this is where everybody would come and we would sit and we'd drink and we'd eat cookies and do whatever we wanted to do. People would sit on the railing, sit in the chairs, look at the butterfly bush and watch the butterflies. My mother-in-law and I would watch the birds and we would drink tea. If this porch could talk, it would be amazing. I love this porch. I always did love this porch. Out of all the things in this house, this is what I will miss the most. People would just pull up and it would be a great time. But as Mom said, it was time for the house to go a long time ago. So I promised to hit it with a shovel, Ma. Maybe I'll do that. We'll see.
the porch. What can I say about the porch, Mom? Your favorite place? How many times I sit here, you sat there, Kenny sat there, occasionally Dennis sat there, Bev, Marion, John would be next to you, or just a wonderful place, Wendy, everybody, grandkids, everybody loved this porch. It was the best place that could ever be. And it's where everybody hung, it's where everybody talked, and if nobody talked to one another for a while, if they happened to get together on the porch, they ended up talking again. And the porch, I will never, ever forget the porch. And I wish we could keep it forever, but we can't. We'll take a minute or two to warm up. My son was into those energy-saving lights. You have to be careful because they're from 1800s. And they're rounded and they're worn. See them? Oh, be careful.
Oh my God. Go ahead.
You ever see a coal furnace?
So this is what you have to do when you was a little boy. Come down and put
I'm
coal
sorry?
in it. When you was a little boy, you had to come down and put coal in it.
I did.
Was that your job?
Yeah, when I was 10 or 12
Yeah.
years old, I used to take care of, my grandmother and grandfather lived upstairs,
Okay.
and I used to come down and take care of that for them. Coal used to come in here. This was the coal bin. Used to be a wall here. This was the window. You open the window, the coal truck parked outside, put a chute to here, and shot the coal in. And then we would take the coal from here and shovel it into there. Beams.
What's the story with the steel beam? What happened?
The floor was sagging,
Oh,
and there was no way for me to prop everything up with what was here. There was wood beams coming down from here to there that had deteriorated on the ground because it's dirt floor and the floor was sagging. So about 8 years ago, we decided we were going to stay for a while. And I had a friend who builds bridges, actually. And he said, I'll help you prop it up for now. and we propped it up to maintain it for now. But everything was like this. Everything was prior to 1800. This is Patterson, New Jersey, on Straight Street, Holland Furnace Company. I don't think they're still there. Floor up here, down here, and when I moved in to help my dad, I closed that off and I put a washer and dryer in there for my mother and father, or for my wife, to have a washer and dryer, otherwise it wouldn't have been a washer and dryer. Great. About 4 foot by 4 foot. And this heat used to go up there, and then it used to go upstairs. Over there is this was a fireplace. Before all of this stuff went in, that was a fireplace. And it had its own stack going up. Then on the second floor, the next floor up, there was another, it was the hearth that I showed before with a fireplace. And then on the second floor, there was another hearth with another fireplace. Years and years and years ago, they used to heat this place with 3 fireplaces. One, next floor, and the next floor. Years ago. We will never forget.
If this room could talk, this has to be everyone's favorite room in the house, because this is where Mom sat all the time. And if you wanted to learn about the world or things that were happening, or you needed to figure something out, you went to Mom. She'd make you a cup of tea. She'd always make you feel better. Very simple lady, hardworking lady. And when she was distracted from things and wanted to get her thoughts together, she'd always do the dishes. Don't touch the dishes. Only Mom does the dishes, unless she tells you you can do the dishes. If it's Thanksgiving or Christmas, you might get away with a little bit. For the most part, she did the dishes. She would cook. She would have her family around her. She was always baking chocolate chip cookies and those little almond cookies that everybody loves so much. And it's just a great, great place to be when Mom was living around the holidays. If the walls could talk, it would be amazing. Peter and Christine, Michael and Amy started their lives together here in this kitchen. They would cook in here, and Mikey would get a bath in that sink, and the bottles would get warmed on the stove. And there's just so many memories. It's hard to remember them all. But the one thing I remember the most about it is that whenever we were in this room, we were all together. We were all happy, most of the time laughing. Very few times it would be difficult, especially when Dad had the Alzheimer's. But then there were funny times too when he had that, but especially when he thought I was his girlfriend. But it was a great time for family and friends. I'm very happy that I had the life that I did in this house, that I was able to raise my children in this house, and that my husband's family took me in and loved me like my own family did. And my mother-in-law was always the voice of reason, and I miss her dearly, and I wish we could keep it, but it's time for it to go. But the memories will stay forever, and I know that if she's looking down right now, she'd be standing at that sink saying, "Wen, don't do the dishes, they're mine."